Right, it's started now.
Welcome everyone. People are joining, which is great. So we'll wait a few minutes before we start.
Yes. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're delighted that my name is Ilaria Parodi of the International Schools team at Pearson, and we are delighted that you are able to join us today to talk about environmental systems and societies for the IB Diploma Programme. Before I introduce our speaker, I would like to draw your attention to the slide on the screen. And Andrew, if you could go to the housekeeping, thank you very much. Please may I ask that you take a few moments to familiarize yourself with this slide, and which outlines our housekeeping rules for today's webinar. A couple of things to notice. I can see your messages in the Q&A chat. So we are working to try and get the chat box going. Sorry about that. So when the chat box is back running, if you need to communicate with us, please use the chat box. If you're experiencing any issues, pop them into the chat box and we will try and solve them for you. If you would like to pose questions on today's webinar topics, please use the Q&A box, which is better formatted for posing questions. There'll be time at the end of the webinar for your questions. And I also would like to thank everybody who's pre-submitted your questions online. There'll be time, as I said, at the end of the webinar for questions, and we're trying to go through as many as we can then. Today's webinar is scheduled to last for about 40 to 50 minutes. It's being recorded, and the recording will be available from our website in a couple of days. We will let you know when the recording is available. We'll send an email out with a link to the recording so that you will be able to access it from our website and either watch it again or maybe share it with your colleagues. And now that I covered all the housekeeping rules that I needed to cover, I'm delighted to move on and introduce our speaker, Dr. Andrew Davis. Andrew is an IB examiner and workshop leader for environmental systems and societies, and he was a curriculum developer for the new 2024 syllabus. He's taught the subject for 15 years. Andrew worked in Southeast Asia for 10 years as part of the Royal Society's Rainforest Research Programme, examining the effects of rainforest disturbance on insect communities. He's published many articles on insect work and maintains an active interest in tropical ecology and conservation. And now I'm delighted to hand the time over to Andrew. So Andrew, over to you.
Well, welcome, and it's good to see so many people here and so much interest in this webinar. And I think it's very appropriate that we're having this on the 7th of March, which is, of course, the World Book Day. So we're all celebrating books, and here we're celebrating one in particular. So yes, welcome to the webinar where we'll be exploring the new ESS syllabus and then seeing how it maps onto the new Pearson textbook. And it's a real privilege to be with you here today. So here's the agenda for today's meeting, the webinar, starting with a look through the 2024 guide. Of course, the breakout news is that ESS is now finally available at higher level, something I think we have all been waiting for a long time. I'll be looking at the differences between SL and HL in more detail later. I'll then look at how the third edition aligns with the guide and explore some of the features we have developed to help students dive deeply into the new syllabus. Me and Garrett and the team at Pearson have worked very hard to make the book self-supporting and easy to follow. Students should be able to use it for private study as well as in lessons. In terms of delivering ESS in the classroom, there are various features that will help you to teach the course, and I'll briefly run through these. That's item 3. And then item 4 is the ebook. And if you purchase the textbook, you will also have access to the ebook, which has additional resources, and I'll go through that later. You can purchase the ebook on its own, of course, but I think as today is World Book Day, I think we should give a shout out to the printed copy. You can't beat having a physical copy of the book, in my view, and here you probably see behind me, I'm surrounded by books. We'll end with some questions and answers, and I'll do my best to answer any questions you have. So we all have different routes into ESS. Some of you may have come to it wanting a new challenge to branch out from your biology or geography teaching, for example, or perhaps you came to it by accident. So serendipity may have played a part. Whatever your path to the subject, there is bound to be some inspiration that you draw on and experience as you teach the subject. For me, this is a bit about me really, and for me to look at some nice pictures of where I used to work. This inspiration comes from my experiences in Malaysia, where I researched the effects of logging and deforestation on beetle communities. I went there in my early 20s to do field work for my PhD and then returned again for further research. And I was there on and off over a 10-year period, so quite a long stretch, before I then retrained to become a teacher. My work really opened my eyes to the need for long-term ecological studies and how conservation works in the real world. What could be termed pragmatic conservation. And on the left here, you can see my field centre on the banks of the Sagama River, Danang Valley, in the depths of the rainforest in Sabah, eastern Malaysia, where I regularly encountered animals like the orangutan, which I think is probably my favourite animal. And there's a picture from a colleague of mine, Arthur Jong, taken out there. So a shout out to any of you in Malaysia or more widely in Southeast Asia who are at this webinar. I think it's my favourite part of the world. Okay, so here's a summary. Let's start by looking at the new guide. So the highlighted words here are just some points I'm going to draw on as I go through the presentation. So concepts, HL, SL, these I'll all return to these things later on. So the guides, hopefully you've all seen it. It was available from the 6th of February from the IB site. So it starts off with the usual preamble about the diploma programme. There's a section on the nature of ESS, what it is and how it's structured. And of course, as you're probably aware, ESS is one of only 2, I think it's only 2, interdisciplinary subjects in the diploma programme. So by being brought to high level, it's the first interdisciplinary high-level subject, which is, I think, quite something. So ESS continues to break new ground, it always has, and it continues to do so. The guide looks at the new HL course. I've highlighted that, I'll come back to that in a bit. Distinguishes it from the SL one. So as I already said, I was involved with the curriculum review process, which started back in, I think it was 2017. And so I've had, again, I was very lucky to be able to see how the course developed over a long period of time. So during the development of the new syllabus, the original course was completely deconstructed. We were told really just start from scratch. And then it was reconstructed. And interestingly, I think what has emerged is still recognizable as the same ESS course that has evolved over the last 20 years or so and has a similar framework. So it's obviously something in the course which works, and it seems obviously the new course is very familiar, I think, to a lot of you. So it's still the course we know and love. Some material has moved to HL. Some of it's no longer there. And there's a new section on the urban environment, which geographers will obviously be very familiar with. But the content is hopefully now more manageable to teach in 2 years. The old SL I know is really quite jam-packed with a lot of stuff. The HL material adds another synergistic, I think you probably say synergistic level of complexity to the course, which is very welcome. The concepts have been streamlined to 3. I think the last iteration had 6, and of course TOC has 12. So 3 concepts: perspective, systems, and sustainability, which all form the foundation topic. There are also 3 high-level lenses, and I'll come back to the high-level lenses later. And so I think overall the structure of the course has a simple elegance to it. I think it really works very well. I hope you agree with that. Point 4 here on the book, and sorry, in the guide, you've got the collaborative science project, which is a new thing. And if you're teaching biology, chemistry, physics, you've already been introduced to this because it's in those guides from last year. And it replaces the Group 4 project. And the ESS, in my school, we used to involve the pupils in the Group 4 project, but you didn't have to. Whereas ESS is now firmly involved, and I think will take center stage in this activity. So what is the CSP? Well, it's an interdisciplinary science project addressing real-world problems that can be explored through the sciences. The nature of the challenge should allow students to integrate factual, procedural, and conceptual knowledge developed through the study of their disciplines. And I think, so a good focus of the project could be the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, which are introduced in the foundation topic of ESS. One of these could be selected, for example, SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, is the focus of the project. And all this is very much, of course, in the remit of the ESS course and its students. So I think ESS will really be central to the whole operation. The aims, won't go through them now, but they're on page 19 of the guide. I'll come back to skills shortly and unpack the tools and inquiry. The syllabus itself, you've probably noticed it's been slightly restructured in terms of starting with a guiding question. I think also that the sciences have this as well. It's a way of framing, what comes next in the subtopic, and direct inquiry, the learning within the subtopics. That starts every subtopic. Another new initiative are these numbered understandings. And again, I certainly know in biology they've got numbered understandings. I think probably the other sciences. I think that's very useful in that it helps to for easy reference, cross-referencing, and so on. There's also some notes, which is basically guidance. How much detail do you go into? And I'll come back to the skills and high-level content shortly. I'll also come on to the assessment because I know there's been some questions about that and what the differences are and similarities and so on. So I will come on to that. So this diagram is from the guide, and it shows the interplay between the key elements of the new syllabus, which are basically the concepts, which I've mentioned already, the contexts, which I guess you could talk, basically it's the real life examples, and the content, which is all the syllabus statements. The relationship across the content, concepts, and contexts have been designed in a way so as to empower students to engage at various levels throughout and beyond, hopefully beyond their time studying ESS. And at the center, you've got this engagement, and you may be wondering about this. Again, it was during the development of the new course, it was felt that some sense of agency was needed to be embedded. So students felt empowered to take action to address some of the environmental issues they're studying. And again, I'll return to that later. Again, I hope you've seen the teacher support material, which is on the IB site, the TSM. It's really, really good, I think. A lot of work's been put into it. And it's got advice about how the concepts can be mapped onto different parts of the curriculum. For example, in topic 3, which is one I've written for the book, biodiversity and conservation, perspectives can be explored by demonstrating how we value species, communities, and ecosystems. Systems by showing how complex interactions in socio-ecological systems can be better understood and leverage points can be identified. And sustainability, by looking at biodiversity loss with the current mass extinction event, the sixth mass extinction, representing a major planetary boundary. So again, the TSM is really worth a look at, and I'll kind of mention it later because it's got some really good resources. So these are the skills. Of course, there are many skills needed to study the ESS course successfully. Skills of the very heart, the syllabus, and emphasize the practical nature of the subject. Whereas in the current course, skills are implicit. We know you've got to do them. They're part of your practical scheme of work. In the new course, they're explicitly listed. And again, this has also been done in the sciences. So again, we're sort of using the same model here, really. Explicitly listed and placed in context throughout the guide to know exactly what you need to do and where you can apply them. I think is quite useful. So their application of skills are included in many understandings. So as you go through the syllabus, you might see some of these sort of the content. They've got these skills listed with a particular understanding. What they do, they provide both students and teachers with a clear context in which to explore and develop these key skills. And they're divided into two, the tools and inquiry. Again, similar to the sciences. Tools are shown outside the central box here and include experimental techniques, technology, mathematical skills, and of course, unique to ESS, you've got the systems and models. The inquiry covers the scientific methods and skills needed for the IA. And all these skills are, of course, supported by the ATL skills shown here in the outer ring. So the whole thing, I think, is mapped very nicely on this diagram. In terms of hours for teaching the practical activities, the old course had 20 hours and then 10 for the IA, so 30 overall. The new course, there's 30 hours for practical activities, both SL and HL, 10 hours for the IA still, and 10 hours have been allocated to the collaborative science project. So overall, the time allocation for the experimental program has increased from 30 to 50 hours, which is, I think, quite significant. Of course, 10 of that's this year, the collaborative science project, but it's still more than we had before. This recognizes the importance of practical activity in the course and gives time to hopefully effectively deliver the skills our students need to master. So, as I've already said, there are many similarities between the current SL course and the new one, built with the addition of the urban systems and hopefully more time to teach practical activities. Also, overall, there is greater emphasis on concepts and skills-based learning. I think that's probably true. At HL, there is greater breadth and depth, and that was something that was aimed for in the curriculum review. So the potential for greater synthesis of ideas, for example, including these high-level lenses, and I'll go back to these later, but they're the legal, ethical, and economic dimensions of the course, and use them to solve environmental issues. So I'll come to the HL lenses in a second. So one example, just to sort of illustrate how SL and HL are distinguished from each other. In the foundation, there's now the planetary boundaries model. It's in the foundation topic. So SL students need to know that it exists, so there's a model. But HL students are then expected to know about how to use data, and look at it more closely and really evaluate which boundaries have been crossed or not. And unfortunately, most of them have now been crossed. So HL material, and I'll come to this jellyfish diagram in a minute, which is sort of summarizing how quite effective way, I think, how the high level material sort of integrates itself in the course, what the two experiences are, SL and HL. So HL material is included in two ways. So there's additional material in each of the topics 2 to 8. Foundation is just there it's for everyone. So, but topics 2 to 8 have additional content for high level. And then there's also 3 high-level lenses: environmental law, environmental economics, and environmental ethics. The latter, of course, ties in nicely with TOK. Now, you might worry that, obviously, it's an interdisciplinary course, and therefore you want a balance between the sciences and individuals and societies. And of course, all of those lenses are very much in the sort of human societies neck of the woods. But if you look at the additional science material in the main part of the syllabus, actually overall it does balance out. And of course, the developers of the syllabus are very keen to have this balance between the what used to be group 3 and group 4 elements. So the jellyfish diagram here shows how the HR lenses integrate with the rest of the syllabus, and that they should be explored in all topics 1 through to 8. This means that to some degree they need to be delivered up front. I'm not saying the whole package, but certainly I think you need to introduce law, economics, and ethics sort of after the foundations. So, for example, you could introduce environmental ethics when you're teaching topic 1.1, perspectives. Both environmental law and environmental economics, it could have been introduced while covering topics 1.3, sustainability. And of course, the jellyfish here shows how the key concept permeates through the whole course and form a sort of framework for it. So what I've got here, I just sort of start with I've got a little animation. And I think that what this does, it sort of sums up the interconnectedness of the new course, supported by this interaction between concepts, content, and context and skills. And as you go through, so hopefully you'll, by the time you know, the end of year 1 into year 2 of the new course, this is what the students have built up in terms of their knowledge and the integrated nature of the course. So the network of connections grows as students progress through the course, forming a complex and secure, holistic understanding of the syllabus. And there's another diagram here which sort of just shows you this sort of interconnectedness. And here's a summary of what I've just said, actually. So the numbered understandings in the syllabus, which I mentioned earlier, help connections to be made across all the topics. There are also connections explicitly listed within the syllabus, and where connections can be made with other subtopics, a list of subtopics is included next to the notes for most understanding. So it's very easy to find your way between different elements of the course. And when I go through the textbook, we've used the same approach. This is a figure from the TSM, which I think is quite nice. It has the 3 concepts. And again, it just shows you that the concepts support this network learning with this sort of synergistic or emergent properties arising from interactions between the different concepts. Okay, so let's move on to seeing how the 3rd edition, and there's the cover, how the 3rd edition of the textbook unpacks the ESS 2024 guide and how it will help you and your students navigate the new syllabus. Production of the book has been an intricate process, and we've been very careful to exactly match the content of the guide and its aims and expectations. We've added lots of features which will help you teach the course and for students to get the most from it. It's been developed in cooperation with the IB, and all the content has been thoroughly reviewed for the IB. It's gone through this sort of extra level of checking to make sure it fully aligns with the latest version of the ESS guide and IB philosophy. It presents, I think, a clear and logical learning experience that can be followed by all teachers, independent of their expertise teaching ESS, and also will explain the high-level lenses in a way, hopefully, that it makes them easier to teach, and of course also the students. So before we move on to look at the textbook, perhaps we can pause to talk about when you can get sight of the new book. There's already a sample chapter on the Pearson site, gives you a flavour. So I don't know if Laurie wants to. I've got some notes here, but if you want to mention something here about.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, Andrea. Thank you very much. I'm here. So we do have an extended sample available on the website. I will put the link into the chat box so you'll be able to have a look. It's about 3 chapters that are available, and is over 340 pages. So there's plenty to be seen. So that's available at the moment on our website. And I can share the link. You just need to give me 1 second. I need to retrieve it. But as I said, I'll include it in the chat box.
And I think it's fairly shortly. We're still working on the book, but I think fairly shortly there'll be a full version available. Some of it, the text will be provisional, and the image not provisional, but not final, and the images will be provisional. But it'll give you hopefully a flavour of the whole book. I think that's
Yes, so that the extended sample will be followed by a free trial, and the free trial is is basically the book made available to you, and is free for 60 days, which it gives you plenty of time to have a look at the textbook and evaluate it. I don't know yet. I haven't got yet the specific date for the free trial, but we can certainly let you know as soon as I have it and share it with you all. And I think the publication date for the book, we are looking at the moment at the end of May, if I'm not mistaken, Andrew.
yeah, it's hopefully be brought slightly, hopefully brought slightly earlier into May, but yeah, certainly end of May currently, but we're working hard on it currently. Yeah, so we hope you like it when you see it. Yeah, okay, let's move on to take a bit of a look at the book. Here's the contents page. The page numbers aren't here yet because we're still working on it, but all the bits are there. Yeah, so what the book does, it closely follows the guide with a chapter on each topic, starting with the foundations. And there's also a chapter on the HL lenses, and I'll give a sneak preview of the opening image for the chapter, which I quite like. There's also chapters on the TOK, EE, IA, and external exams. These are all actually in the book, so the whole thing is one package, and the ebook will then reflect it. But the book itself, the physical copy, will have all this in it. I'll talk more about external examinations later, but maybe I'll just briefly discuss the new IA now. I know there's been some questions on the assessment. So there are several changes to the IA, and it's the same for both HL and SL. It's the same sort of set of criteria they're using. There's a new criterion strategy you may have noticed, which has been included. And what this does, it assesses the extent to which students understand how tensions. So the new course is very interested in sort of tensions between different perspectives. So yeah, students understand how tensions between perspectives can impact the environmental or societal outcomes of a strategy that addresses an issue central to the student's investigation. So that's a new thing. There's also greater emphasis on the treatment of data. The analysis and conclusion, evaluation criteria all have more marks than the earlier research, question, inquiry, and the methodology. So the sort of higher order thinking skills have got more marks, which I think, again, I think it's a good thing. Applications and communication criteria are no longer used. They don't appear in the new model. Another new thing is a certain degree of group work is now allowed, and there's been a lot of discussion about this in all the sciences and ESS. So students must still have their own individual research question, but they may work in small groups on some of the logistical elements, which makes sense if you're doing ecology, for example. So, for example, they may collaborate to collect a large pool of data, which they can then use different parts of. So very much like using a database. There's detailed guidance on the IA and the IA chapter in the book with examples of best practice and hints for success. So here is, I thought I'd share this with you. This is the image introducing the chapter on the high-level lenses, which I had. So each chapter basically has an image, as with the current book, and I was sort of looked everywhere for a good image, which reflected. Well, obviously, you've got law, economics, and ethics, and I wanted something which sort of was overall representative of the lenses. So I selected this. I think it's quite good, and it works very well. I quite like it. So here's a section from the book, just to show you what it looks like. So this is from topic 3, conservation and biodiversity, and it's the second subtopic. So what you do, you start at the top with a guiding question, which is frames inquiry. You could actually make up your own guiding questions. They're not sort of examinable. They're just sort of, so you can get students can read it and think, okay, what's coming up in this particular chapter. Then there's a list of all the understandings, numbered, the high level very clearly shown there as well, with these high-level tabs. And then you start off, you start off with the numbered understanding at the bottom there. And then we work through in order all the different understandings, and each subheading has the number. So it's very easy to make sort of cross references within the book. Also here at the bottom, you can see these connection boxes, which link, it basically says this particular subtopic, or this part of the subtopic links through to these other subtopics. This information is also in the guide, but we've expanded on it and really thought, okay, where can this connect in with other different bits of the course? So this is the end of subtopic 3.3, and it just really shows you that the high-level material is clearly signposted. So you have above it, that high-level tab on the left, you've got the standard level, and then under it, you've got the high level, and on against each subheading, you've got this tab, HL tab. So if you open the book at any point, you can see immediately what's high level and what's not. So it's all basically, you can, it's very clear what high level students need to know, what SL students don't need to know. And at the end of each subtopic, there are exercises using the command terms from the exams so that students can assess their understanding of one part of the course. And obviously this can be used, I mean, I think probably formatively, but it could be summative assessment as well. So each subtopic has these questions. Then there's various features I'll quickly look at, which run through the book. So you've got the concept boxes, and there's one here from topic 2. So what they do, they just sort of show you how the concepts are realized in different bits of the syllabus and how they apply to one particular part of the syllabus. So this will help students to continually revisit the concepts throughout the course. So it reminds them, look, this is a concept you need to know about. This is how it links to this bit of the book. I think they work quite well. The context we explore through examples. The old book had case studies, but I'll explain the distinction in the new guide about case study and example. So there is a difference between the wording they've been quite careful about. So we've got these real world examples throughout to illustrate how the content applies to the real world. And the examples, we've basically made sure we've spanned the globe. We've got, I think, examples from pretty much everywhere, every continent. And we've tried to make them as diverse as possible. So we really refresh the whole thing and really, you know, so, okay, what examples really are used there? There's some examples in the guide as well, and we've often used them and elaborated on them. So carrying on here with the examples, the context, the difference between these examples, real world examples. The guide refers to real world examples in each of the understandings. So it's using an example to illustrate one part of the course. That is now distinguished from the case studies. Case studies are now used for the resource booklet. And what they are just more extensive. So examples illustrate one part of the course content, whereas the case studies are more extensive. That's what they'll encounter. It's just like it's more an extensive example. There's maybe several examples, but so yeah, in the guide they refer to examples, and the case study is referring to what the resource booklet provides: spectrum of facts and figures, often using obviously one geographical location, but an awful lot of different angles on it. I've already talked a bit about the skills. So in the book, we have unpacked, and in these skills boxes, unpack the skills. So if they're listed in an understanding, we then have gone into detail about what they are, how they work, maybe given a practical activity to do. And what they do, they enable students to explore and practice skills in context. So these pop up right through the book. We've covered all the skills which you need to know. Of course, international mindedness is essential to any IB subjects, but particularly, of course, ESS. And we have these sort of global context boxes, which indicate international context for a particular area of study and show how it fits into the global landscape. So again, we've got these right through the text. So a new aspect of the course, which I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about the guide, is this engagement. So in the guide, at the end of each subtopic, there's engagement. Now, it's not it'll come examined. What it does, though, it enables students to develop a sense of agency about the course and the environmental issues they're looking at. So in the book, we suggest various engagement activities at the end of each subtopic and at the high-level lenses for you to explore with your students. And the guide, as I mentioned, also has some suggestions. And of course, they could be used for CAS activities potentially. So a whole load of different ways you could use this. It's just really getting a way for students to think about the application of what they're learning in the course. So TOK is in our book. We have, as we have in the previous books, we've got the top boxes. Of course, the 2017 guide had explicit links to TOK. These aren't in the new guide. I think the idea is just to try and streamline the content a bit. Although there are sections on the theory of knowledge which suggest ways in which it can be delivered in ESS in the guide. So in the book, we have used top boxes to show ways in which the top can be integrated within ESS. So we've done the work that the previous guide did. And what we've done, we've taken knowledge questions from the TOK guide, the new one, and then explore them in the context of ESS. So they all start with this in bold. There's a knowledge question, which the students will be very familiar with from TOK, and then we've unpacked it in terms of ESS. There's also a whole chapter on TOK. What this does, it goes through each topic. There's a discussion on TOK and how it fits into each topic. There's also advice on the exhibition and essay for students. As in the current guide, we've got the current book, we've got the extended essay chapter, and that unpacks the criteria and shows how a good ESS EE should be so structured. You know, get hints and tips and things like that. Similar to the EE chapter in the current book, because the EE guide has not changed recently. So in terms of teaching, using the book for teaching, as there are throughout the book that we have activities, and I think pretty much every subtopic will have an activity, practical or research or something students can do, make a poster. There's a couple here just to illustrate what they look like. Not too long, but they're sort of so students can actually learn through inquiry. That's the point of them, really. I've already mentioned the skills. There's exercises, and I'll come on to the practice exam questions in a minute. And the connection boxes enable you and the students to very quickly see about connections between the different subtopics. And there are connections for the high-level lenses, and the bottom right here you can see a couple of them. And there's also the connection boxes for the other topics. So in the book that we have these, they're everywhere. These how material connects across this network learning idea again. We also have some other sort of text boxes in the margin. So key fact boxes highlight essential information that the students are reading. This makes them easily identifiable for quick reference. We have keywords emboldened, and they're linked to the glossary, which will be part of the ebook. We have hints for success boxes, which provide hints and tips and highlight common pitfalls. Interesting fact boxes contain additional background information that will add to the students' wider understanding of the issues being discussed. And web links with these QR codes. So students can use their mobile devices to access various sites. And what we've done, we've selected web pages where there's additional information, maybe video simulations, background reading, and so on. So they're used right throughout the book. We're almost there. We're on to I think the penultimate slide. So just the sort of coming towards the end here. And here is a practice question from the end of the chapter. So each chapter, then you have practice exam questions. I sort of raided question bank here and really looked at examples which were obviously still relevant to the new syllabus and also the high-level lenses. So you may be wondering how the external assessment has changed, what the format is for the HL papers. There are actually sample papers you can now get from the IB for paper 1 and paper 2 for both SL and HL. Well, the new examination model is very similar in structure to the present one for the SL students. The changes to external assessment are fairly minor, really. So similar in structure, 2 papers for both SL and HL. Paper 1, you've got the resource booklet based on an unseen case study with then questions on that, as in the current model. And paper 2, we've got 2 sections. Section A, which has both short answer and data-based questions. Section B requires students to answer essay questions, like in the current model. Students will be required to write 1 structured essay from a choice of 2. So that's a cut down from what they currently have to do. And HL students write 2 structured essays from a choice of 3, which means they have more time to do it. So HL will be required to illustrate greater depth and understanding of the wider complexities of environmental issues using, for example, the HL lenses. So just to go through the papers, paper 1, SL is 1 hour, 35 marks, HL 2 hours, 70 marks. HL basically have an extended case study, so it's basically twice the length of the SL paper. Paper 2, SL is 2 hours, 60 marks, and HL 2.5 hours, 80 marks, and that's because you've got this additional essay question they need to do with 3 parts A, B, C, often 4 marks, 7 marks, and then 9 marks. So the practice questions at the end of each chapter cover all types of questions from both papers 1 and paper 2. And also there's some in the higher level lens chapter as well. So the ebook, which you can buy separately, but if you get the print book, you'll get this as part of the package. It's got further practice questions, mainly paper 1. Will be a practice paper 1 and paper 2, which I guess you could use for sort of mocks or what have you. Multiple choice questions for self-assessment on each subtopic. That'll be self-assessed. They'll be able to sort of write their answers and immediately find out how they're doing. There's answers to all the exercises and practice questions will be there as well. There's the glossary of all the key terms. And then lots of worksheets. And I know we've been doing the worksheets since the first edition back in 2010. What they do, there's further examples. You've got skills will be explored, like statistical analysis. How do you do that? Resources for class activities, like labs, extension activities, a whole range of different things will be covered by the worksheets. So all that will be included with the book or the ebook. So I think that is it from me. So I'll stop sharing, and then we can perhaps move on to sort of questions you might have.
Yes, thank you very much, Andrew. I thought that was very, very interesting. So thank you very much for that. And we do have quite a few questions. So I will start from in chronological order, if that's okay, from the first one that was posed in the Q&A box. From Taha, can you tell us about HL level of our lesson?
So the HL, so could you sort of clarify that about the HL lenses, was that?
I think the HL, yes, higher lenses level of the lesson, I think.
But in terms of, I think there was maybe another question about how you might integrate high level and standard level if you've got them combined in the same class. That might be one question that might be asking.
So there was a question that was pre-submitted online, and this was about how to guide students on the higher lenses, level lenses.
Yeah, we sort of touched on it in the presentation. There's actually very good advice in the TSM, the teacher support material, and there's routes. I think they have 3 different routes. It's on pages 14 to 20 of the TSM, and so it shows you how you might integrate HL lenses, which starts on page 21. But effectively, you need, I think, careful planning, because if you've got sort of 2, and this is in a way it's a luxury we haven't had before in terms of having HL and SL in the same class, and as with biology and the other sciences, you have to just plan very carefully how you can engage the SL whilst, obviously, if you're doing SL only materials, it's fairly straightforward. But as soon as you go into HL material, what the SL do? But there are some very detailed suggestions in the TSM. If you have a look at that, it's on their site.
There is another question which was submitted, which is about the higher level lenses, and is specifically about whether students as getting ESS as SL level could then they change into HL level.
Well, sort of currently, obviously, at the moment, it's just SL, but from this August when the HL starts, it'd be like every other subject which has HL. So you can start with HL and then switch to SL later on within a reasonable amount of time, probably a few weeks actually, or vice versa. So yes, as soon as the new course starts in August this year, SL/HL, the usual deal will apply to movement between the two. But obviously, after a few weeks, if you don't want people switching from SL to HL, because by that point they probably missed too much material. Yeah, so it all kicks off in August.
Indeed. Then I have a question from Caroline, who's asking, IAS and CSP are mandatory for the new curriculum for the ESS. Am I correct?
Yes, the CSP is, well, they're involved in it. I mean, it's like the old Group 4. It's there's a sort of, at the end, they used to have to do a reflection, which was then obviously they had to pass through it. But it's more of just a way of getting the students in the sciences to collaborate together. So they're expected to do it. There's 10 hours allocated in the time of the course. So whether the IB will actually check on that, I don't know how they would do that. But I think the expectation is that yeah, the CSP, you do it because there's 10 hours in the timing for it. And what was the other element? There was the CSP and the
IAS.
the IA.
IA, yeah, IAS.
Yeah, the IA is, as always, it's again, there's 10 hours allocated for that, and it's the same for both HL and SL do the same thing. Though interestingly, the weighting is slightly different. It's 25% of the final assessment is for SL, and HL is 20%, and it's to do with the different, the lengths of the course and what you have to get through. But yeah, they do the same thing.
And then I have a question from Ryan, who's asking, when we are teaching combined HL/SL classes, how might we integrate the ethics and economics HL lenses to benefit everyone? How about sorry, it's two questions.
Oh.
How about the awesome Anthropocenic goals? I don't know whether I'm pronouncing this right. SDGs are already old news. How might we address neocolonialism in the economics HL lenses?
Oh God. Well, I think if I deal with the so the first question was, just remind me what the first one was. So there's obviously two bits there.
Sure. So the first one was, when we're teaching combined HL/SL classes, how might we integrate the ethics and economics HL lenses to benefit everyone?
I think initially, because obviously students will be doing ethics with the TOK, so they'll be very familiar with. As you know, if you're involved with TOK, you have in the new curriculum for TOK, you've got part of, in each of the different the subjects they look at, you have to look at the ethics, and so they'll be very familiar with that. And I think when you're looking at perspectives, that would be a good way of introducing it initially. So if you're teaching, obviously starting with the foundations, and the expectation is that everyone starts with foundation. I think the old course, it was slightly nebulous with what do you start with, but it's now the expectation is you start with topic 1, and as you go through that, there'll be chances to introduce ethics when you're looking at perspectives, and also economics when you're looking at sustainability, also law probably. So you can sort of integrate it that way and to start off the conversation. And as you go through the course, you can then, as you approach, you're going through ecology or conservation, you can then see how you can apply the HL lenses to that particular topic. Again, the book, we give sort of ideas about where the HR lenses can be applied right through the course.
Yeah.
And so the second question,
The second question was, how about the awesome Anthropocene goals?
Oh.
SDGs are already old news. How might we address neocolonialism in the economics HR lenses?
I'm not sure I describe the Anthropocene as that old news, because it still hasn't actually been decided, but the poor geologists are still saying, is it a thing or not? And that we, in the early discussions of in the curriculum review, we say, well, should we have it in the guide, because it's a bit controversial? And we thought, well, yes, it's, we can now recognize in the rock the rocks that what will be there in millions of years' time. Well, there'll be evidence of humans. So I think to me it's sort of, I think it's cutting edge. I'm not sure it's all new. SDGs again, what they were trying to do with the new syllabus was to make it like future-proof it, and the SDGs go through to, I think, 2032, 2030, somewhere around there. And of course, the course goes through to that. And what we were looking for was like sort of models which you could pin ideas to in the course. SDGs work quite well. Planetary boundaries model, donut economics. And they just really used as examples of what is sustainability, how can you actually realize it. So neocolonialism is an interesting one, actually. And again, I know that's something very much a TOC approach. So it'd be something, yeah, I'm not sure it's been addressed particularly in the guide. I'm not sure, I have to look back at it actually. Yes, but plenty of, certainly in terms of environmental law, you could look at that. So I think plenty of opportunities for it. But if you want these things to be embedded in the next version of the subject, I think very shortly there'll be sort of the IB will be asking people to get involved with the next curriculum review, which will last for 7 years. And this is, so I think was it Ryan? We need people like, obviously IB needs people like you to get involved to then bring in things which they think are relevant, increasingly relevant. And the ESS maybe doesn't do as much as it could at the moment, but it should in the future. So yeah, it's an ongoing rolling program with the IB. Yeah, good question.
I have another one. There's many more actually. I know there is a space for environmental law. While in my country we follow the EU environmental regulations. In India, where I'm teaching, the laws are different and more so based on English common laws. So while teaching this section, do I need to concentrate on environmental regulations worldwide or local laws?
I think it's a bit of both, because if you look at what the I mean, really don't panic too much about the HR lenses. When I saw them, I thought, my goodness, I'm not an economics, I'm not an economist or a lawyer or an ethicist. But I think what they've done, they just like selected the key components of all of those different aspects of environmental studies, and tried to unpack it in a way which is hopefully fairly easy to follow. And so I think by using local, and I think they probably say use local examples or international examples to obviously whatever works best for your students and makes the most sense for them. Because often the examples they give in the guide are often quite general to allow this idea of selection. You can select your own examples. So I think do a bit of both probably. So ultimately in the exams they want to use examples to illustrate their answers, and if there's a local example, that's fine, because they're more likely to remember it, I think. Yeah. I hope that's answered the question.
Sorry, Andrew. Thank you. There is another question from Caroline. Is there any prescribed ESS subject outline, or shall I follow the one similar to other Group 4 science subject outlines?
I'm not sure what I mean by subject outline. I mean, the IB site has an outline for ESS and what's in it. So I'm not sure what that's relating to specifically. I don't think you want to clarify.
I don't know if Caroline is still online.
And the subject outline is, of course, the guide, but there is a briefer version of the outline of the course on the IB ESS site, which gives a quick overview of what's in it. So that's the question, what the question was asking. It's an answer anyway.
I have a question from Corey. Will the assessment model change, or will there still be a paper 1 case study and paper 2 student response?
Yes, I went through that. So it's the same model, paper 1, paper 2. So the high level will have a slightly, well, it's a 2-hour paper versus a 1-hour paper for standard level. So the 2-hour paper is basically just an extended case study with just more data to analyze, and presumably relating to the high level material they also have to cover. So it's a very familiar model, I think. You'll recognize it when you see it.
Next question is from Ryan again. So Ryan's saying, complex is not the same as complicated. Complex adaptive systems is a new core unit of study in the systems transformation pathway IB pilot. Does the new text make a distinction or use complex colloquially?
It's probably use the word as it generally applied in terms of simple versus complex. I'm not sure we go into much more than that. Yeah, so obviously as you add more elements, things become more complex. But you're right, it's the same as becoming more complicated. So whether we're using it in the way that it could be used, but it's just used in the way that the term is generally used, I think, in the current guide at least.
And then again, Ryan, do real-world examples, for example, indigenous societies in the Ecuadorian Amazon, count as named examples for assessments?
Well, yes, I mean, the examples you select, hopefully, and again, the guide has ideas for examples, but often it will say, use an example, well, they say local, but it could be obviously regional, something which the students can relate to. And ultimately, these are then used in the, I think, largely in the essay questions to illustrate points they're trying to make. And so I think ideally these examples need to be something the students can relate to or have an interest in. So, for example, they may not have live in or know rainforest, but they might be interested in it and then want to use that as a case study. I think the more case studies you have, the better, really. It's the more you can cover. Lots of opportunities for bespoke examples throughout the course for you and your students to select.
We have a question from Shalini, who's just come in. Based on your teaching experience and interaction with the new curriculum, do you recommend the co-seated HL/SL class for ESS?
I think very much, well, it depends on your sort of having the SL and HL together. I think very much depends on the school, I think. I mean, in my school, we generally had separate classes. It depends on how many people you're dealing with, I think. So I think it'd be more of not what I would recommend, but it's what I think individual schools or colleges, how they could cater for the numbers and the mix of HL and SL they get. I don't know how many people, hopefully a lot will be signing up to HL. I think the IB have done their homework and realized there was a market for it, and it could be quite a lot of people. But so I think there's a lot to gain by having a mixed group potentially, but then because the SL, it just needs a lot of planning, and then the SL could, if they're interested, then potentially obviously look at some of the high level material just as out of interest. But I think it very much depends on how your school plans to sort of schedule these things. I think that most schools do actually have mixed groups, often with quite large numbers, and I hugely admire people who can do that and deal with the SL and HL together. So at some point, the SL will have to go off and do their own thing and then come back, particularly dealing with some of the high level material. But, so I think it very much depends on your school.
We still have 3 minutes to go, and then we'll be at time, I think. So I have a question about the case study for HL/SL. Shoba is asking whether the case study for HL/SL will remain set the same with few more questions added in the QP.
I think that's, I think it'd be the same. I think when they're developing, this is the paper 1 resource booklet, I think the question's about. I would imagine they wouldn't have 2 different case studies. I think if you look at the sample material, you can, from the IB, this will clarify it. But I think what they'll have a case study from one region, and then there'll be speed for the HL be more information, presumably covering legal, economic, and ethical angles. And then the questions might start off similar for both SL and HL. Then the HL will have more questions to deal with. It's a double the length, basically, the paper one for HL. So it's a more hefty case study, but the approach is exactly the same. There's more information to take on 2 hours.
I think we probably have time for maybe a couple of more questions, and then we will answer all your questions, but separately, possibly via email. I think, because we still have a few to go, and we are, as I said, almost at time. I have a question from Payal, who's asking what percentage should be taught by geography teachers and bio teacher if doing team teacher, if teaching together, I guess. Is it possible to teach it by geography? Some students think it's an essay subject and want to avoid science.
Well, the way we did it by school was me and Garrett, basically, and I would do the biology, ecology, because I'm a biologist as well. And then he was his geographer, so he would do the geography. But initially, I actually taught the whole thing myself, and I think there's a lot in a way to be said for that as well, because you have a overview of the whole course. So it depends again on your particular college who's available. Of course, you may want to get involved. Actually, I don't know, with the high level lenses. Obviously, you've got economics, law, and ethics. Like I said, that they're done to a level where a non-expert can teach them, and I developed the HL lens chapter in the book, and I'm no expert in law or economics or ethics, but I was able to read the advice in the material from the IB. So I think really it's whatever works in your school, and it's a bit of a sort of must be a sort of weak answer, but I think if you've got a geographer and a biologist who are interested, you can both do it together. It does divide up quite nicely. You've got, and the new guide, you've got topics 1, 2, and 3 are they're the ones I did for the book, and Garrett did 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, which is more, it's not entirely geography, but it's the urban environment, it's things geographers are more familiar with. And then maybe a joint effort on the HL lenses. Yeah, but I think the more people involved with the ESS teaching, the better. And yeah.
One very final question, and then we'll have to close. Can a student pursue environmental science career at university, which ESS, HL, has there been any collaboration with universities on this account?
Yes, that's the simple answer. During the development of the curriculum, various universities were involved in the consultation, and because the whole point, in a way, of not the only point, but one of the it's not a problem with the SL course is that you can't really, it's a standard level course. It doesn't, if you apply to university to do environmental or whatever, it wouldn't, it's difficult for it to count. I think in some countries it may count, but the high level was developed very much with a view to, so students can apply to do anything environmental, law, well, science or whatever at university. And they did consult the universities in terms of what they wanted, and in various meetings we had, there was often a university person there or in consultation, and they looked at the syllabus and what's in it, and they're happy with it. And yes is the answer.
Thank you very much, Andrew. We still have questions, but I'm afraid we have to close now because we really are at time. So thank you very much to Andrew.
So if you're not happy with the answers I gave, if you want to sort of post another one, I'll try and look at them, and then I'll get back to you through Ilaria to
Yes. We will find a way to get back to you on your questions.
Not ignoring you, but time is, we've sort of run out of time.
Thank you very much for all of you for attending today's webinar, and obviously a massive thank you to Andrew. I hope you've enjoyed today's session as much as I have. And just a couple of things to close this webinar. We will obviously appreciate your help. If you could fill in the post-webinar survey, that'd be great. If you could let Andrew how much you've enjoyed the great job he's done today. And the second thing to remind you is that the webinar has been recorded, and the recording will be available on our website in the next 2 days now. I'm conscious there's a weekend coming up, but we will try to upload it to our website as soon as we can. And we will be in touch via email to let you know when the recording is live. So this is all from us. Thank you so much again for joining, and have a good continuation to your Thursday and a good end to this week. Thanks so much.
Yeah, goodbye, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Bye. Bye-bye.